Okay, today's topic on Faith Mysteries is May the Strong Force be with you. I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you'll appreciate it. So please hang in there. Okay, the topic today on Faith Mysteries is May the Strong Force be with you. So am I talking about Star Wars? No, but I thought I might draw you in with that. Am I talking about my daughter's family? Their last name is Force. May the strong forces be with you. Okay, there's something in physics called the strong force. Sounds pretty cool. It's strong, right? There's also something called the weak force, but I'm going to talk about the strong force. There's actually 4 forces in physics. Don't turn this off yet, okay? Just hang in there. Gravity, which you know, magnetism, electromagnetism, which you know, weak force and the strong force. Now, the strong force is so cool. Let me back up. Hang in there. It's not going to be that difficult. We all learned in, I don't know, grade school or high school that, the most fundamental unit that the whole universe is made up of are atoms. And we used to think they were indivisible, but now we know that's not true. And atoms is a fundamental building block of what are called elements that occur in nature. And inside each atom, there's a nucleus. And you guys probably remember what's in the nucleus? Protons and neutrons, right? What flies around the nucleus? Electrons. You're still with me, right? Okay, here's the question. Protons have a positive charge. Electrons have a negative charge. So protons will repel away from each other and electrons will repel away from each other. So and neutrons have a neutral charge. So if all of these protons and neutrons are packed together in the nucleus of the most fundamental building block in the universe, why aren't they just flying off away from each other? Because they're the same charge. They're both positive charge. They're all positive charge. So they should be repelling, not staying together in the nucleus. So why do protons and neutrons stay together in the nucleus? And the answer is the strong force. So you have these electrons flying around the nucleus where the protons and neutrons are, and it's all in this beautiful equilibrium, beautiful harmony. Question is, where's the strong force come from? Why does it exist? And what would happen if it wasn't here? And what does this got to do with the Bible? Well, there's actually a verse in the Bible that many biblical scholars think is talking about the strong force. So hang in there and I'll give that to you at the end. Okay, so you think about like a fundamental compound like water. So we all know water is what? H2O, right? H2O. So in water you have the proportion of 2 hydrogen molecules for every 1 oxygen molecule. And when that comes together, it makes a water molecule. And if you try to make, if you want water, what do? You go to your sink and you turn on the tap and you got some water and you drink it, okay? If you want to create water from scratch, it's doable. It's not very easy. It's actually pretty dangerous. It's very expensive. You can't just take 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen in that proportion. They're just magically going to come together naturally and make water. It doesn't happen. So there are some things you have to do. It requires a lot of heat. There's a lot of explosive force that comes out of it when you make it. So unless you want to blow up your kitchen, I would discourage you from trying to make water on your own. Just use the faucet. But when you look at water, you got these hydrogen atoms and these oxygen atoms, right? So look at for example, just the oxygen atom. Inside each oxygen atom is, atomic number is 8, so it has 8 protons and 8 neutrons and 8 electrons, okay? So the question is, why are those 8 protons just flying off in different directions? Well, there's this thing called the strong force that's holding it all together. So what is that? Where does it come from? How does it get there? How does it work? Here's something interesting, okay? The nucleons inside the nucleus, nucleon is a generic term for either a proton or a neutron, they emit something called a gluon, which holds them together. So they're emitting these gluons and then reabsorbing them, emitting and reabsorbing. But when the gluons are there, they will hold those protons together. And without these gluons, the world ceases to exist. Because without the strong force holding the protons together in the nucleus, every atom would rip apart, every compound would explode, the universe, the whole fabric of the universe would be dissolved. So you got to have this thing called the strong force just for any matter to exist. So the question is, what are the gluons? Where do they come from? Well, we know where they come from once you have everything put together. But we're not really so sure about that when you look at the history of the universe and how it got put together. Scientists are working on that very question, but we don't have final answers to that yet. Here's something interesting. When you look at gluons and how they hold the nucleus together, they're emitted by the nucleus itself. And that should remind you of something about the DNA molecule, which is a building block for life. So we're gone from biology and chemistry now down to physics. Same principle applies. The very thing that DNA needs to replicate comes from within the DNA molecule. It emits enzymes which help to reproduce itself. So the nucleus of an atom emits gluons which help keep the atom together. So it's like a self-replicating structure. And that when you have a self-replicating structure, it's really hard to figure out how did it get there. It's not like one thing leads to another. It's just there. And it seems like it's always been there. Okay, so I said to you earlier that there may be a Bible passage that talks about the strong force. So here it is. Colossians 1 verse 17. He is, meaning Jesus, okay? Jesus is before all things, and in him all things hold together, okay? Now, many biblical scholars think, well, those that are into science think that this verse is talking about Jesus holding all these atoms in the whole universe together, and without him, they would explode. It's interesting because Jesus is talked about as being there at the time of creation. So it would make sense if he was involved in that. It's also interesting that Jesus became man and came down and lived with us. So you have Jesus being, the Father always seems to be like separate from the universe and kind of in charge and has a game plan for what's going to happen. And Jesus is kind of like the mediator. I did something kind of funky just for fun. I typed into Google, what does Colossians 1 verse 17 mean? Okay. And you guys know how there's that AI overview that kind of looks at a bunch of posts and just summarizes them, which I often ignore because I don't like AI stuff. But this one was kind of interesting. So I thought I'd quote it for you. The AI overview, one of the things it said was, Jesus is responsible for all things continuing to exist. Jesus is the world's superglue that holds everything together. And I just thought it was funny that the word superglue was used, and these things that hold the proton together are called gluons. Can you tell I'm having fun? I hope you enjoyed this. There are times I lay in bed at night and just marvel at God and how he's put all this together. And certainly he deserves our worship and praise. So I love you all and see you next week.